Hello and welcome to PK's webinar on how to be an effective API manager. And before we get started with today's presentation, I just want to remind everybody that all attendees have been muted, and today's presentation will of course be recorded. We absolutely encourage all attendees to get involved in today's discussion and presentation by including any questions that you may have within the Q&A tool within the Zoom platform. And at this point, I would now like to introduce today's presenter, Lou Powell, PK's Head of API Enablement.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, and thanks everybody for joining today. So this webinar came out of some conversation that we had with both Gartner and with Forrester, where there seemed to be interest in looking at the role of an API product owner or product manager, and the discussions that we had that showed that there's a diversity of perspectives on what that role is and what that role means. And so today we've added a little bonus into our presentation. We're gonna talk about a few things. So my thoughts are this: that before we talk about product management, we really need to understand what an API product looks like. And as we start talking about that, it seemed like there was a really great opportunity here to address another concern that a lot of folks have had, and that is the ruling that the Supreme Court made in favor of Google versus Oracle on the copyright infringements for the API, for the Java API, and what the implications are. And it seems like there is a lot of conversation on both sides of that argument. Some that are seeing it from the optimistic perspective of, you know, by keeping interfaces free, we create that free collaboration of utilizing those interfaces and having them benefit the industry, and also not starting to utilize an interface, having somebody jack up the price or change the service, and then all of those places where we've created those integrations are now held hostage because that person owns not only what stands behind it, but they own the contract that I'm consuming. So the challenge becomes, well, where is the trade-off there? What do I truly own and what do I not own? And what is the risk of this ruling on APIs? And my answer to the question is completely baked into the idea that if you're building a great API product, then you're probably not really at risk. And if you see your API contract as something that is very unique and very proprietary, then you do have the opportunity to patent that particular interface. So you can always patent something to protect it. The thing that we're looking at right now with the Supreme Court ruling was around trademarking, and trademarks and protects the unique expression, but not necessarily the organization or the appendices or the table of contents or the interface. So, and that's actually explicitly stated in the trademark laws. So it's looking at that saying, hey, if you want to trademark something, then, you know, let's take a book, for example. If I was trademarking my book is naturally just trademarked, and my unique expression, all of the stringing together of the words and thoughts that I've created, that's protected. But the structure of the book, the 12 chapters that I've created and the names of the chapters, that is not protected. Someone could do a retrospective on my book and use the same chapter structure and same chapter names, and they would not be infringing upon my copyright. And with that same idea, that's what the ruling was for the Supreme Court to rule in favor of Google. So what does that mean? And does that put me at risk? And here's the question I would ask is the API contract alone the value that you're providing to your audience? And I believe the answer is no, it better not be. If the contract alone is the value, then there's really something missing, because the contract is a mechanism to get to the value. So the capability that you're creating is accessible through the contract, but that's not the value. So when we start to think about the API contract or an API as a product, the first thing that we need to understand is what is a product. So if I'm going to productize my API, so that I can put it into a marketplace and I can have multiple consumers that are deriving value from it, then I need to understand what comprises a product. And a product is anything that can be offered to the marketplace that satisfies a want or a need. It is the answer to a job that is being done, right? To give you the Clay Christensen perspective, right? So we're looking at answering that job to be done. And the first thing that we think about at PK when we do that is this, this big flip, the Ogilvy flip in design thinking that took place, in the 60s, where there was this intentionality of, instead of creating and deriving things and convincing people they need them, let's go figure out what problems people are trying to solve. And then let's create great solutions to those problems. And then we'll be more successful, which causes us to become less introspective and more extrospective, right? Or if that's even a word, but looking outward, looking at our customers and saying, what are you doing? What are you struggling with? And how can I create a great solution? And I think that these things are starting to make their way pretty pervasively into IT across the board. This idea that we need to start looking at how we create solutions that service our customers. And when you create that solution, it actually has 3 different aspects, and they're all distinct. And the first one is the solution to the problem. Are you solving a problem I care about? So the first question is, did you create something that I actually want? You created some kind of new tumbler that has fish floating around inside of it. You go, well, what problem is that solving? And maybe somebody really loves fish floating around in their tumbler, and that is something that they're looking for. For me, I would look at it and go, well, that doesn't solve a problem I've got. So the idea that you're solving a problem, the idea that the way that you've solved the problem is something that the consumer is interested in. So this is another thing. This is fit. So when we start looking at it, you go, you can't just solve the problem. I think that's what we see today, is a lot of APIs solve the problem in the way that they do. And when I mean that, it's, I've got a business system and I've taken the way that it presents the data and I've just formatted it in a RESTful way and given it to you. So it solves your problem. The problem with that is it's not very attractive. It's not very easy to use. It wasn't structured in a way that solves my problem easily. So the fit, it's a bad fit. So fit becomes really important. We look at it and go, you're solving a problem that I've identified I have, and I like the way you solved the problem. So now you've checked 2 boxes. And the third one is quality. So you can have a problem or a solution that solves my problem. It can be done in a way that I'm really excited about, but if I'm trying to use that solution and it breaks, if I'm trying to use your Blender and it breaks, if I'm trying to use your API and it's not available, and I'm trying to conduct critical business with it, all of a sudden quality is another aspect. Or when you look at the breadth of the data or the timeliness of the data, those types of things start to play into it. So all 3 legs of the stool have to be there in order for a great product to work. So API product owners own this perspective. Do we solve a problem that people care about? Are we solving it in a way that they are delighted by? And do we provide it in a way that is high quality and meets their needs? So that's a great product. And to give you an example, I would look at it like this. So when we look at that SCOTUS ruling and you look at it and say, if Google Maps API were not protected, it isn't anymore, right? We'd look at it and go, Google's subject to the same ruling that they just got freed from the Java thing. So if Google's Map API can now be replicated, is Google's product in jeopardy? And the answer is not really, because the API isn't necessarily the value. So it solves the problem, right? But then the fitment, right? The API contract. So even if all 3 of these companies had the exact same API contract, let's say that small area maps is just doing 1 county in Utah. You would look at them and say, they don't solve my problem if what I'm looking for is a global mapping solution. So it's a different problem that they're solving. They're just solving a very local problem. And the question is, if they don't solve that part of my problem, is it a good product for me? And the answer is no, it doesn't compete at all. And then on the other side of it, you look at it and say, well, what if Acme Maps decided they were going to provide maps that were really broad across the country? But the quality of the maps, they're either not highly available, or they don't have the detailed photos that Google has, or they're not updated in a timely fashion, or the accuracy of the maps is not all there. So all of that stuff is the unique expression. So that's the stuff that sits behind an API. Those are the things that uniquely belong to Google, not just the contract, but all the value that sits behind it. So even though Acme tries to provide the same solution that Google does, they don't have the value that sits behind it. So that unique expression that Google presents and the quality that they use to present it becomes the unique part of their product. So when you start thinking about, does this ruling create a risk for companies and for APIs and start to deteriorate value? My answer is no, it doesn't, because your value should not just come from your contract. As a matter of fact, the usage of that contract over and over again makes it more compelling for people to use your contract, knowing that they can change providers later. But if you're the best provider and you've got the best solution and the best quality, then you win. So now the question is, who is making sure that you're doing that in your company? And that is a product owner. So now let's jump into this concept of a product owner. And I think product owners are not new concepts to companies, but I believe they're new concepts to companies in the IT regard. When you start looking at them managing IT capabilities, not things that are productized inside of IT. So this is a typical view of a product owner. It's a digital platform product owner. And this digital platform product owner owns that product and the go-to-market and the value it provides to an audience in the market. And they own all of the downstream capability connectivity. And often the way that we see this manifest is there's a budget associated with this particular product, and that product owner and the person who owns it, they own that budget. And therefore, they're asking of the rest of the folks in the organization to produce capabilities that satisfy what they need in order to deliver their product. So that creates a rather project-oriented view of the world. We've got a product-oriented view of the digital platform, but we have a very project-oriented demand of everything that sits below it. And the way that plays out is the people delivering all of these services that platform is dependent upon now are going to build a very unique expression of that meets the demand of that one digital platform. And that ends up creating an integration that's typically not reusable, and it ends up dictating how it is built. And so therein lies a big challenge. And a lot of times we'll find customers who will say, well, we've got core APIs, and then we've got these APIs that belong to the product team, and they own the whole thing. So we've got a product owner, and they own the product, the digital platform, but they also own, the bespoke APIs, or we call them backends for front ends, BFFs, or facade, or experience APIs, those types of things. So if you're building experience APIs, then those belong to your platform. But that still doesn't solve the problem for the enterprise of creating an API product that is broadly available. So this view gives you a little bit of an understanding of that dynamic. We have digital platforms, but often those digital platforms can consume collections of API offerings. So if we had a sales mobility solution, we might have a suite of APIs that are built for sales service. And the nice thing about doing that is we can now use that to drive our digital product, but we could also share that directly with customers or partners that we're doing sales with. So our APIs as offerings can become a product themselves. So we would have a product owner at the sales mobility level. We would also have a product owner at the API offering level. So that's another aspect. So when you start thinking about that, if you've got partner integrations or sales integrations or vendors that are using APIs to solve problems and address your company, you'll see that there's going to be a need for a product owner role at that level. And then at the very bottom level, you've got the API product, which represents many different API offerings and digital platform consumers. So let's dive in a little bit. So the API product owner is someone who is focused on how to construct the collection of APIs and capabilities that provide value to a group of people. So they're looking at, okay, if I'm working with my partners, what capabilities do they need access to? And how does the API collection that I have solve their problem? Is it easy to understand? Is it easy to access? Is it easy to onboard them? Do we need to create new capabilities inside of those APIs and therefore work with the API product owners to extend their API capabilities to satisfy my product offering? So the API offering product owner is the person who owns this collection of APIs that span the enterprise that provide value to a single consumer group. So there's our second kind of product owner that we see. And in the API realm, companies who are providing suites of APIs to customers really need to have an API product owner who is that coordinator, collaborator with those groups. And then this bottom level API product owner is the API product manager who owns the API capability itself. And they are looking upward at all of the consumers of that. And those consumers could be that collection. It could be a partner. It could be mobile applications inside the enterprise. It could be public consumers outside the enterprise in an open marketplace. They're looking at the myriad of consumers that are consuming that particular resource that they manage. And they're trying to understand the unique expressions that they have to create in order to make all of their customers happy and make sure that it's providing value to the customer. So in order for this role to exist, it becomes very difficult if we live in a project world where the product is the mobile application that we present to our customers. And the person building that capability in IT is being asked, just build what I asked. Now we're more of a project management role, not a product management role. But a product manager would be someone who would participate with that group and understand how they can take this product and make it satisfy that need while satisfying the needs of all of the other consumers. So it may be that a new operation needs to be created, but it may be that we just need to add one attribute to an existing operation. So this becomes a very efficient way to manage things that are broadly used across the enterprise. Not all things that you build inside of your enterprise are going to demand a product manager. There are things that look more like integrations, and there are some things that are just managed and consumed by very close-knit teams. Those things don't necessarily necessitate a product manager, but anything that's being used broadly across the enterprise or outside of the enterprise that has many consumers and is being evolved needs a product manager to ensure that you're doing that and that you are satisfying your customer and providing value. So this is the way we see the product manager behaving. The product manager acts as the liaison between three groups: the API dev team, who's building the API capabilities; the business, who represents the value that are delivered by those capabilities on the company side. And that's an important thing to look at, because if we build really cool stuff that is wanted by the marketplace, but there is no business value, then we're wasting a lot of time. We have to build things that are needed by the marketplace, valued by the business, and capable of being built by the development team. And that confluence of those three ideas is where the product manager makes their home. And that is making sure that the backlog represents high business value and high market value. This is a big old list, and I know some of you are going to be out there doing some screen snaps. So this is our list of product manager responsibilities. So when we look at the things that an API product manager is responsible for, we look at it and say they are responsible for the whole life cycle, getting it off the ground, understanding how customers find out about our API, making sure that we're expressing it to them and helping them understand how to get onboarded to our API portal, doing feedback with them and getting responses so that we understand, was that a good experience? How do I make it better? Working with the API team to share vision and strategy for delivery, working with the consumers to define APIs, articulating stories. I mean, they're working through all of these things, measuring value, and then working on the common good for the company for user story prioritization. And when I say all those things, it's more of a ensuring that there is company value and consumer value, and grooming the backlog. So this end-to-end responsibility of oversight belongs to the product manager. They're the ones that are going to be driving what does the product do, and how is it providing the most value to the company, and then measuring that value and helping people understand how that product provides value so they continue to get funding. So that's a big part of that product manager's responsibility. And that is my presentation for today. Well, I had one more slide in there. Oh, I missed it. Here it is. Let me get this one real quick. I must have skipped over it. The API product manager skills. So this is a good thing to look at too. What does a product manager, if you're looking for one, what do they do? Strong leadership. That is a big deal. They can't be someone who sits back. There has to be someone who stands forward and drives the product. So that's a really important thing, because you're going to have folks that are going to tell you how they want you to do it. And it's going to take a strong product manager to keep their product good, clean, and usable by all of their consumers, to stand strong and say, no, we're going to do it like this, and that meets your need. What you're asking for would be a deviation from how we deliver value. So you need somebody who's got a little bit of a strong personality there. And then they should have product management or product design experience. That would be a nice thing. If they don't, I believe you can teach that. Web product development experience would be beneficial, because a lot of what the API world is dealing with is those same concepts and ideas behind the web development world. And then experience negotiating with stakeholders, being a good facilitator, a good collaborator, and a good negotiator. So those are things that great product managers do. And then they must have oral and written communication skills. Being able to verbalize and communicate in a written form to all stakeholders inside the team, with the business, and with customers is a critical skill for that product manager. And now I can give you my thanks for participating. And I know there's got to be some questions that you have, whether it's around the SCOTUS ruling, what a product is, or what a great product manager looks like. So happy to answer questions if you have any.
Yeah, thanks so much, Lou. Really appreciate that. And so glad that you were able to share that last slide, because we did have a question in regard to those skills. An attendee is curious to know, when you're recruiting for API product managers, what exactly are the ideal roles to recruit from?
Oh, good question. So, wow, like just 3 or 4 years ago, if you were recruiting for an API product manager and you went to the marketplace, there were no candidates. That wasn't a job. So it was really hard to find. Now you're going to find them. You're going to find API product managers with some experience. So that is absolutely out there. If you're looking internally and you want to grow someone, there's a couple of roles that we have found that are really effective at being good at converting into a product owner or product manager. And the first one is someone who is a development lead, who has done a lot of work in collecting customer requirements. So if you've got a good, strong technical lead who has spent a lot of time with customers collecting requirements and collaborating, that person tends to be an exceptional transition into a product owner role. And another role very similarly is a BA, so a business analyst who's got some good technical background, who has done a lot of work working with customers to capture requirements and those types of things. That person also has tended to be a good fit for the role. And the reason those two tend to be a good fit is because effective product owners are working collaboratively with technical teams on very technical solutions that are solving other technical demands. And so bringing someone in who's an exceptional manager, very organized, very good at communications, very good at leadership, but has no technical aptitude, tends to be a problem in creating great API products, because they are rather technical things.
Thanks, Lou. And again, kind of in that same realm, another attendee wondering, in order to become a product manager, what should your background be?
I think I answered a little bit of that in this last little, in my, I call them, I do more rants than explanations. So my last little rant there was I think the answer was in that. It's, you need to have some technical background. You need to be a great communicator, written and oral. and you need to be an organized person. If you're that person who says, I'm a great communicator, but I'm not very organized, wow, you're going to struggle with this role. So if you've got that magic 3 set of technical, communications, and organization, then I think you're going to find yourself a happy place.
That's great. And any specific advice that you might have for a senior software engineer who writes and consumes APIs all day that is considering a career change?
Writes and consumes APIs all day that is considering a career change. Wow. So, I live on the consulting side of the world, and there's always a great opportunity there. We work with great companies across the board on the API management and in the tooling side. I would love to call them out, but there's so many and I don't want to pick favorites, but there's a lot of great API tooling companies that are looking for experienced engineers who have that insight, who can transition to a market support and a consulting role. Consulting companies are always looking for great folks like that, and a transition to a product owner inside of a company that is building out an API suite for a large group of users would be, that would be just a fun ride as well from my perspective. So that would be my answer, and I think that's one of those opinion things. So you can take that for what it's worth.
Great. And then I think we'll just close out with maybe 1 or 2 more questions. We do have an attendee wondering, can an API product manager manage various different products, many different products?
Yeah, absolutely. You can manage many products. For sure. The big deal is just making sure that you're not overwhelming the product manager. And the second thing is, I would say, make sure that they're in a related area. So they deal with the same downstream business systems or the same audiences, so that there's continuity in the role.
Great. And then Lou, we have someone who's wondering, can you comment on the business models and monetization of APIs? Yeah, the business models and monetization. So business models is, varied, of course. There's going to be models where you're utilizing the APIs to drive other business value inside of your business. So in an e-commerce business, the API is not necessarily providing its own value. It's facilitating greater value, which is selling products, right? Or it could be that it's facilitating placing orders, or it could be doing all of those things. So I would look at that as an extension of the value that your business currently provides. We find people that go out and provide APIs where that capability is a net new value. And that net new value can be based on things that you do that you've never sold before. Or it could be that you're providing net new value based on the data you have around the things that you do that are interesting to a bunch of people. And we work with many customers who are learning that since they work with millions of consumers in a very unique place, that their operational insights are very valuable to another market. So that becomes an opportunity for them to monetize. And the models used for monetization are always going to be market oriented. So it's based on the value derived by the consumer of it. And then the way that you can monetize that inside of tooling is ever growing. And there are some public marketplaces you can participate in. And most of the API portal tools give you a mechanism for monetizing and managing collections of APIs that can be, subscription or utilization based or those types of things over time. So there's that one's a big one. There's a lot to unpack there, but I hope I gave you some insights of things to think about. Great. Well, I know we're at now the top of the half hour. So I do want to thank you, Lou, for sharing these insights. And I want to thank all of our attendees today for spending some time with the PK team. I definitely had a number of questions of ensuring that we'll be sending out the slide deck and recording. We, of course, will be sending that out sometime the next day or two. So please be sure to check your inbox for both the recording and further resources in regard to API enablement, and in different ways that you can get in touch with us to discuss your API strategy. So thanks again, and we hope to see you in one of our future webinars.
Thanks, everyone.